I was working in the industry for 5+ years. I have currently I'm at Acentura as associate lead business analyst. So I was working in telecommunication industry, mainly with Dialog, and also I have done few projects with Mobitel as well. Then before that, I was working with the financial instrument industry, and I started my career at customer engagement industry with a startup. And I'm graduate from ULS University. I'm coming from a technical background. I have followed computer science and technology degree program. So and I started my career as a business analyst because I was interested in UML. There's a subject called object oriented designing and something like designing, but so I was interested about UML. That's how I started my career as a business analyst intern. So let's proceed. During the presentation, I'll be covering who is a business analyst and what, as a business analyst, what will be your responsibilities in Sri Lankan context, and what are the differences for you to, as a business analyst, what will be the differences in agile and waterfall methodologies, and what you can the practices that you will follow as a business analyst, and techniques that you can use to manage a project, and stakeholder management. So moving over, I just add it in here. So it says business analyst must be a creative person. I won't say you have to be like creative. We have to have new ideas, but you will definitely need to have a solution for issues that you face. Not just a one solution, but maybe few to resolve that issue. As it says, there are a lot of situations where it will be the resource limitations or the unidle situations to deliver what your client's requirements are. So if I explain who is a business analyst, I think most of you all are working with the agile environment, so you must have come working with the business analyst as well. Uh, in the definition terms, business analyst is the person who build the bridge between the development team and the customers. So, as a business analyst, the team or the organization will expect you to participate for the meetings from the beginning, and then gather the requirement. You need to first understand the customer requirement, then you need to identify what are the requirements are there the customer is giving, and then you need to elicit the requirement and gather the requirement. You need to collaborate with the customers, product owners, business users, and the development or tech leads to elaborate the requirement correctly. And then you will have to communicate the requirements between the customer teams and the development team. So you will be creating few documents as well for this communication, and it is very important for you to get the sign off from the customer or the developer teams that for the documents that you have created. And during the documentation that you will be doing the requirement modeling, like I said before, the UML, the data flow diagrams, the use cases, flow diagrams, sequence diagrams, activity diagrams, like that. You will use the diagrams in the requirement modeling phase, and then you need to manage the requirements. So there will be, if we take the agile methodology, so there will be BA validation during the sprint, and you have to get involved and validate your requirements are developing correctly, and at the end you need to validate that the given requirements are delivered correctly as well for your business owner, business users, or the product owner. So if I take what are the essential skills when it comes to the business analyst, I would say it is very important to be for you to be a fluent communicator. and you need to be very careful on your communications. Like you have to keep the communication meetings and whatever, whether it's a formal or informal, you have to keep it a record. And as a practice, you either need to maintain the meeting minutes are very important as a business analyst. And then if you have make a decision, you need to inform it via email to the whoever the stakeholders that you are engaging with. Otherwise, if this communication breaks from you, there will be a huge gap between the whatever the customer expectation and what is the things that development team is developing. So you have to be there in the middle and always maintain that relationship. And you will need interpersonal skills. You should be very good at stakeholder management. You will find different type of stakeholders throughout your career. Some are very friendly and you can easily manage or build a relationship with, but some stakeholders you won't be able to engage that quickly, or that they won't be that friendly, and the level of the stakeholders will be different. Maybe you will have to speak to CEO level even though you are intern. Like that, there will be a huge gap, but you must be good at stakeholder management as well. Then it's very important that you deliver whatever whatever you promise to the customer on time. So even though the resources are limited, that you will have to make sure that the deliverables are online. And if there are any gaps, yes, it is mainly project managers responsibility that follow up on the timelines of the project. But as a business analyst, it also your responsibility to look into the deliverables whether it's aligned with the timeline. And if they are not, you need to organize those deliverables as well. Other than that, for your career, that you should be able to you should have the ability to solve the problems that you're facing, and analytic skills, because you will have to analyze the requirements that given. There will be mostly for the existing system that the business uses, or the customers will take a new requirement. Then you need to analyze the requirement and see whether there's a gap. So based on that only, you will be able to come up with a solution. So leadership skills also very important, because there are a lot of situations then as a business analyst you will have to lead your team, the developers, QS. You will have to take the leadership and lead them into a direction. And also, as a business analyst, it's a very important to have a technical and business knowledge, because we'll frequently communicate with the business users and the technical team as well. So if you go and speak to technical team in the business terms, they won't understand. And even if you go and talk to business users with the technical terms, they won't understand as well. So it's very important for you to know the business domain knowledge, and plus technical capabilities to be a successful business analyst. I would say everyone is at this equal level, but at least you need to have the both knowledge. So in the so I have worked with the international organization, and also Sri Lankan organizations as well. So what I see the main differences between the international organization and the Sri Lankan context is that at international level, that you will be just BA there as a part of the team. You will assign only the BA related work. So it's just documentation, BA validations, and uh, the gathering the requirement management only. But in the Sri Lankan context, you're joining organization as a business analyst, mean that most of the times you will have to take the Scrum Master responsibility as well if it's an agile environment. And I have faced the situations where a marketing team has requested me a lot of support. So BA might be a part of the marketing team as well. And other than that, requirement management and the stakeholder management is there. So why I have specified this in the presentation is that so if it's just business analyst responsibilities are given to you, it's very easy. because the time allocation and the time management, the workload that is coming to you is less. So you can have plenty of time to manage your work. But when you are a Scrum Master, you will have to facilitate the team with all the other, you have to clear out the dependencies and make sure team is running as well. So if you need to act as a main contact point for the whole team. So that's why the Sri Lankan organization, I see business analysts have more responsibilities actually. uh, so I'll start to explain what is the waterfall method. So I'm sure that you all know about the waterfall methods, that it's a software development life cycle. So it goes as each phase one by one, and you won't be any releases at the middle. But for you need to gather the requirement, then you will move on to the planning session where you plan all the requirement and you then model the requirement. Then you will be move to the coding, testing, and deployment. So the the main phases where the BA requirement is required is requirement analysis phase and the testing phase only. So requirement analysis, planning, and testing phases only. But and waterfall method, what BA do is we will gather the requirement at the initial level, and we'll have the most of the times we'll have BRD sign off for the requirement. You need to initially gather the requirement, then you need to draft the requirement, send it over to the business users and get them signed off. And then only you will start speaking to your development team as well, and start the development. But there won't be any client involvement in the middle of the sprints, so the development phases. So it's actually easy and straightforward, but customer won't see the development, what they are getting as a final product until the final stage of the development phase. If there are any changes that requested by the customer, they will need to raise as a change request, CRs. So those change requests will be looked as a separate effort, under separate effort. So separate costing sheets. So that won't impact in the main delivery timelines or development scope. So and if we I'll go to the agile method next. So if we see the what is difference between the waterfall and the agile, uh, the you won't know the risk until the final stage, and you will define, build, and release in the one phase. But if you take the agile methodology, that there will be cycles. So there will be first release to the customer with the minimal viable product, and we will keep the building the product under with the phases wise. And if we take the agile project management, any questions so far? So if we take the agile project management, so that is, I think, mostly common use project management right now. And it will be different, as I explained earlier. There will be a lot of cycle wise development. So each cycle you need to the sprint is defined mostly as 2-week sprint. So there will be sprint ceremonies from the initiation to the sprint you will be developing, and then at the end of the 2 weeks, that you need to conduct a show and tell, and show the customer or the business users what you have developed in the agile methodologies. But the life cycle will be go on within the 2 weeks actually. So if you take the agile methodology, that you will maintain a product backlog, and the from the product backlog you will take the sprint backlog. So there will be 2 backlogs at the agile project, and so 2 to 4 weeks sprint cycle will be there, and the potential shippable product will be delivered at the end of the 2 weeks. And other the between these 2 to 4 cycles, they will have the daily stand up to see if there are any dependencies, and if there are anything that's stopping the development as well. And as the how role of agile business analyst is different from the traditional business analyst is, as I mentioned earlier, the traditional business analyst, your expected involvement is less. But when it comes to the agile business analyst, you will have to uh, your involvement is little bit more. And the as agile business analyst, you will have to know the business domain. Then you need to stock the product backlog. Then also the sprint backlog, you have to maintain the sprint backlog separately. And also during the grooming session, you need to groom you have to identify the requirement. Then during the grooming session or the day, you need to groom that requirement, and then store in the product backlog, so you can take it into the development in the next sprint. So, and you as a business analyst, agile business analyst, you will lead all the agile ceremonies, daily stand up, grooming, sprint planning, retro to show and tell. And so you need to facilitate collaboration between the agile team. Otherwise, because it's a very tight schedule we are running, because we need to deliver the whatever we promise by the end of 2 weeks, we need to very close collaboration between the QA dev team. So we, as a business analyst, you are middle, and you need to facilitate the collaboration. And there will be times that new joinees are there in the teams, or someone else is leaving, or even to conduct a training to outsider. So mostly the business analyst is the person who will get requested to do the KT. And you need to definitely be a good team player, and build a very strong relationship with even with the customers, even with your team, because there will be a lot of times where you need to negotiate with the customers. So for that, it's very important to have a very strong relationship with them. So as a business analyst, when you are analyzing the requirement, there are a few questions that you will need to answer, and see whether you have the answers to these questions. Like what business processes need to be revised, created, or eliminated, and what information do we want to know about the track, about various entities in order to deliver this requirement, and what stakeholders such as customers, suppliers, vendors, and the system will be involved in the effort, and what policies and rules and guidelines, business behaviors, and decisions will be altered during this development phase. So when you are analyzing a requirement, you need to find answers to all these 4 questions actually. And for analyze the requirement, there are few technologies that you can use. First one is SWOT analysis. You can, when it's come to a requirement, if you are taking a requirement for your track, you can conduct a SWOT, like strength, weaknesses, opportunities, and threat analysis, and see the impact. Usually not the business analyst, but BU or the product owner conduct the SWOT analysis and pass the information to the business analyst. But still, while you are analyzing, even you can analyze this and discuss the product owner whether at what content we are going to take this requirement into our development cycles, or what is the benefit that we will be getting by delivering this requirement. And there's another same analysis method called PESTER. So you can analyze the political, economical, social, technological, legal, and environmental impact. All the factors might not be directly related to your analysis when you are analyzing the requirement for a system system. But if you are taking the larger development, like initiation of a new project, you might need to analyze these factors before you are starting the project actually. And this you can actually use when you are day-to-day analysis. So this will analyze the stakeholders and stakeholders of your requirement. So you will see customers who are the beneficiaries of the business, and how does this issue will affect to the beneficiaries, and you can identify the actors, the transformation that you will need, and the big picture. You can see the big picture. uh, the owners need to be identified. Actually, when you are developing, it is very important that you need to have an owner to the requirement, and if there are any changes or deviation, you need to inform the owner and get their permission as well. And if there are any constraint for your development, you can identify them as well. So when it comes to the UML diagram, the modeling of the requirement, if you are as a business analysis, if you are using these UML diagrams, it's very easy to communicate between the stakeholders. So it's actually visual aid, so you can show it to the customer or the business user and explain it easily. So commonly used, the UML diagrams are use cases, flowcharts, sequence, activity, and data flow diagrams. Actually, most commonly used diagrams are flowcharts and the use case diagrams. So this is a use case diagram I have shown there. You can use those diagram as well. So when it comes to stocking the product backlog, if I take an example, so I'm currently working with the Retail Hub application, mobile application. So what I do is I identify that there are 4 quarters that we are working on. Quarter is for 3 months actually, so around 6 sprints actually. So during that quarter, I'll commit to a certain requirement from the product backlog. It it didn't mean that I'll take the whole product backlog. What I do is when the requirement is coming to me from the business users or customers, I'll analyze that, I'll gather the requirement, but even I'll go to the grooming stage and groom the requirement, but I'll store it in the product backlog. So we have it there, and based on the impact and the ROI of the requirement, that we will be prioritize them and deliver accordingly. But the requirement will be always stored in the product backlog, maybe for around for next 3 to 4, maybe around actually for a 6 month, I have requirements stored in my product backlog. But it doesn't mean that I'll deliver or I'll start developing all of that in the next sprint actually. So backlog priority, mostly commonly used method is Moscow method. So you will have the requirement as must have, should have, could have, and won't have. So must have will be the most priority that you are required to provide your attention like as the priority requirements, and based on the analysis of the requirements, that you will prioritize them in the next sprint. So basically, since we are more commonly used Jira, in Jira you will be creating the epics, and epics will be prioritized based on the this criteria, and epic priority, and then the story priority levels will be impacted on the when you are taking that requirement into the current sprint. So epic is the not the highest level, but in the middle in the agile sprint. But in working, I'm mostly considered epic as the most highest level that will be impacted to me. So under a epic, I'll have usually epic will run for a 2 or 3 sprint, and under the epic, I'll have user stories. So epic will be I'll mark the priority level of the epic and also the priority level of the user stories as well. And so as I mentioned earlier, so user story will be under epic. When you're creating a user story, as an agile business analyst, there are few points that you need to be very careful on. So usually, standard way of writing a user story is as a whoever you need to define the user, then I should be able to, and you need to add the what are the actions that user need to perform in order to get the outcome. So usually as and I should be, so that are the common words that the three lines that you will be using, and those will be actually defined words there, so you can just fill in the blanks. And that's how you write a user story in the agile environment. But as a practice, most of teams follow that, but there will be a situation where the development team is more comfortable in not following the exact method if there are very technical stories like that. But standard way that we will follow this method. And user story should have a description. It's just a little description that you will indicate what you will be delivering in the user story. It's just one line you can add. So if it's not clear for a developer by reading the user story, but the description will explain what it's going to be, what is the deliverables, that high level summary of the user story. And when you're creating a user story in Jira, it's very important to include the links, UI links. So the UI designer will be share you the UI links or whatever the API links available. So you need to add them here and keep it accessible to the developer. And if there are any validations, like so in this user story they have not mentioned any validations, but just imagine we are writing a user story for a password. So just password should be contain capital letters, simple letters, the special characters like that. Those validations should be mentioned in the validations field, and whatever the criteria that need to be checked uh, while developing the acceptance criteria. So acceptance criteria is the main main area of the user story, where all the deliverables will be mentioned in the acceptance criteria. And the QA will develop the test cases based on these mentioned accepted criteria, and the developer will be develop the deliverables based on the acceptance criteria as well. So you need to mention all the acceptance criteria in here. And also, if there are any assumptions that prior to starting the development, that if you have any assumptions like that, you can mention the assumptions area. And other than that, you can maintain the dependencies. If you take the user story into the sprint without clearing all the dependencies, you can mention those dependencies here as well. And if this story is depending on another user story, that also you can mention in the story itself, and then you can add the dependency as well. And if there are any limitations, you can add it in the limitation column. And other important things is DOR and DOD. DOR is definition of requirement, and DOD is definition of done. So it's advisable actually, when before you take a user story into the sprint, you need to see all your defined DORs are met. So the requirement is gathered and signed off, and you have the UI UX from the UI designers. And if it's API related the development, the APIs are handover, and story is signed off from the product owner or the BO. So those DORs need to be met before you are taking a story into the sprint actually. Otherwise, if there are dependencies like API documents or UI UX, the the development team won't be able to start the task at the starting of the sprint, and it will delay the whole process, and even the QA will be struggling at the towards the end of the sprint. So it's very critical to have all the DORs met before you're taking a story into the sprint. And then you can't make the transition to done state in a Jira unless otherwise these the definition of done are met. So in here actually I have mentioned few. So the code is the peer reviewed, and the QA performed the QA is performed and issues resolved like that. And then you need to the features accepted by the product owner to live environment, the show and tell, conducted and sign off. There will be different DODs based on the project, but standard the DODs are there. So you need to met all the DODs in order to make the transition to the story into the done state. So when you're creating a user story, it's very important that user story is smart actually. So when you're creating a user story, the story should be specific. The accept you should be able to mention whatever the deliverables in acceptance criteria very clearly, and story should be measurable. So I'll explain it later, but during the sprint planning session that we are measuring the story. So the story should be able to measure by the development team and the QA team, and the stories need to be attractive, should be realistic and timed. The story should be actually realistically deliverable within the agreed timeline that is there. Usually it is advisable to create a very small stories, not the which won't exceed 5 story points mostly, but it depend. So other than that, the when you are writing a story, it should meet the invest criteria, invest guidelines. The story should be independent from each other, so there will be minimal level of dependencies, and a story should be negotiable between the development team and the product owner or the business users. It should be valuable. The delivery should add a value to completing the epic, and as I mentioned earlier, it should be estimatable, measurable. The story is it's very important to be very small stories. We are usually breaking down epic into more very small lot of stories, because it's easy to deliver or easy to understand, developed by a developer, or to testable actually. So for a QA, it will be easy for the QA to test if it's a small story. And so during the sprint planning, you need to measure the stories. So measuring the story is that, for example, the project team will have a base story. The universal non-base story is login window. So the login will have the backend development and front-end development, UI UX, API calls. So everything that all together, so backend plus QA, backend frontend plus QA, that they will be considered as login story as a one story point. So based on that, so considering that effort that you will be spent for developing a login is a one story point, you will measure whatever the other stories in your sprint. So usually the standard is that you will have 3, 5, 8, 13, 20, and 40 story points for a assign. You will assign those type numbers of a story point to a sprint, sorry, story. But there can be situations like at the closure of your sprint, the story is halfway through, that you might 3 story point stories halfway through, so you might need to define the 0.51 stories as well, sorry, 0.5 2.5 stories as well. So you will be accurately calculate the whatever the spillovers are there. But in the standard procedures, that considering that the login story is one story point, you will measure the rest of the stories. So each team can have different base stories, and also each team can have different base stories for 1 3 5 as well. So I'm telling this based on the dialogue practice. There are teams who measure the stories based on the considering the login story is one story point, but there are teams who measure the stories with the defined stories, base stories for one story point, three story point, five story point. So if it's a three story point, they will measure the effort against the base story of the three story point, actually. So as a business analyst, before you start the sprint, you need to see the sprint velocity. Sprint velocity is the number of story points that you will be able to deliver within the sprint. So standard way, not a must, but the agile team usually have 2 to 1, the developers and one QA measure. So for two developers, always it's advisable to have one QA in agility, and based on that, we will be calculating the store velocity of the sprint. So you can take the hours that they are available, the allocation of the tech lead, developers and QAs, and based on that, you can calculate the sprint velocity, and whatever the minimum the developer velocity and the QA velocity, whatever the minimal value will be the sprint velocity. So it's a bit of a complex calculation, but uh, you can have a Excel sheet like that when you're calculating, and you need to know the planned leaves, the leave plan of the team into the calculation, and if there are any holidays, you need to consider those as well. So training, orientation, interviews, holidays, all those need to be considered when you're calculating the availability of the developer. So for here, they have allocation for sprint planning stand up, like standard agile ceremonies, that there are standard allocations, and then the total is calculated by deducting full available time. uh, all this time that they will be spent on the other task will be deducted from the complete availability, and then the hours that available for the sprint will be calculated. So as I mentioned earlier, so usually one story point is defined with the base story, but based on the theme, that one story point is considered mostly as a 7 or 8 hours. So one day is a one story point, or there are teams that consider it as a half day. The 4 hours is a 4 to 5 hours is a one story point. So based on that, this available velocity will be deducted from the number of hours that we will take into the story points, and the sprint velocity calculated based on the number of story points. So as the Scrum Master, you most of the times the one who will be starting the sprint. So before starting your sprint, you need to actually calculate the velocity and communicate the sprint velocity to your the product owners and the business, and based on that only, that you need to take the task into your sprint. And before you are starting a sprint, you need to be very careful on all the whatever the stories that you plan to take into the sprint are dragged and dropped in the Jira. So you can create a test sprint, and you can add all these stories into the pending sprint. And other than that, you need to make sure that all the stories have subtasks for development tasks. Like there can be ways that you are assigned that subtask. There are teams who just automated and assign the subtask for front end, and the backend tasks are assigned, and there are teams that who break down further and have a defined subtask into a story as well. So whatever the procedure that you follow, that you need to make sure that all these stories have subtasks assigned, and subtasks need to be measured. Usually as a practice, you shouldn't add any time, the expected delivery times to the story, but you always need to mark that in the subtask. And so we just imagine that we are spending 6 hours for the development and 2 hours for QA. The development subtask need to be assigned 6 hours, and the QA subtask need to be assigned as 2 hours. There may be many more subtasks somehow that you need to assign the hours that they will be spent based on the story points, and those need to be assigned to a story. So you need to check all those things before you are starting a sprint. Why I'm saying this is so if you make a change once you after you start the sprint, there will be spikes in your breakdown chart. So the actually breakdown is expected to follow in the exact lines. You can avoid this if you be very careful on these points, like adding a subtask, and the small points like adding a subtask, and make sure the hours are assigned to a subtask, and subtask must be assigned to a the developer or the QA. And also you can always keep this user story not assigned, because story is not a single person responsibility, and it can be not assigned to a person, but subtasks need to be assigned, definitely assigned to a person. Then you can define the timelines and start the sprint actually. So next I'll explain about the Scrum ceremonies. So as I mentioned earlier, you need to you always need to lead all these Scrum ceremonies in an agile environment. So Scrum ceremonies that each sprint, 2 week sprint, will have around 5 Scrum ceremonies, that which as a BA you will have to plan and lead those Scrum ceremonies. And so first on the main Scrum ceremony is daily stand-up. We all join for the daily stand-up maybe twice a day or once a day. With the standard procedures that you need to complete the daily stand-up within a 15 minutes. You shouldn't take more than that. And each and every the participant will be asked, or that they actually need to provide answers to what they have done yesterday and what they are going to do today, and if there are any dependencies that they need to escalate, and Scrum Master need to take them into the note them, and then clear those dependencies so the team can continue working as expected. So that is the first Scrum ceremony. Then you will have the grooming session. Usually in my sprints, I have a full day grooming session. So from the after completing the daily stand-up, we all will be joining to the grooming session, and from around 10 to 6 until 6:05 we will continue the grooming session. We will discuss the new requirements that have came into the track, and then we will see what are the velocity, the priority of the requirement, and whether the developers and QAs can raise questions, and if there are any dependencies they can raise it earlier during the grooming session, and we will invite the business users if there are any further clarification. So the story will be groomed, and we will take the story into a stage where we can easily take it into a sprint and can start the development. So every the development team members and QA team members will be more clear on the requirement, and they will have chance to discuss and ask questions during this grooming session. And you can prioritize the requirement as well, based on the method I have mentioned earlier. And then we'll have the sprint planning. So in the, if it's take a 2 week sprint, around fifth or sixth day we'll have the grooming session. And by the first day of the next sprint, we'll have the sprint planning session. During the sprint planning session, as I mentioned earlier, so we will see what are the if there are any priority given from the business users, or we will take the product backlog and see what are the most prioritized requirement. Based on that, and based on the calculated velocity, we will prioritize, we will take the stories into the sprint. And also we will discuss on the delivery order and see whether the work is available for the 10 days for the people who are involved. So imagine that the balance is not there and we have additional QA. So we will take the QA related one more QA related story into the sprint, like SIT support or UAT support into the sprint. And will balance out the work of the team members as well. So throughout the available period of the sprint, the developers or the QA will have work to perform with the working hours. And show and tell, I think most of you are from the quality QA team. So usually the QA team members are the one who conduct the demo. And during the demo, that the whoever, even it is not mandatory to QA team members to perform the demo, but it can be developer, tech lead, or the QA. It's actually recommended that way. Whoever who work with the user story to be demonstrate the story to the business users, other than the business analyst, because business analyst is the one who understand the requirement and written the story. That is why the suggestion is like that. So when you are demonstrating, you need to tell the story number, go to the story and explain the story to the business users, and then demonstrate the story to business users so they will understand. And if there are any deviations that if there are any suggestions, the business users can add. And by the end of the show and tell, the business BA will gather all the suggestions, deviations mentioned during the show and tell, and those will be considered as a separate story into the next sprint actually. So then we will have retrospective as a the sprint ceremony as well, Scrum ceremony. So during the retrospective, you can answer 4 questions: what went well, what you have learned during the sprint. This is totally based on the sprint, last sprint. What didn't go well during the sprint, and what we can do better. So when you are answering these questions, that you need to be very specific, what went well. So you can say like, so someone has the person A that helped you in order to deliver a very difficult task. So you, with the help of the A, you were able to deliver this task within the timeline. Like that, you can be very specific on your comment. And the all of the team members comments are very appreciated, and the business analyst is the one who will be leading this the retrospective, and he or she will take notes at the end of the retrospective. Usually you can make a page on the conference page, or you can share the notes with the team with an email. So when it comes to the facilitate collaboration, So there will be the team members and other stakeholders who are very vital for the success of the product. So you need to be, as a business analyst, you will be the main communication point for all the stakeholders and developer QA team. So you need to be very careful when you're collaborating with teams, that need to minimize the miscommunications, and you need to mind the language, and everything need to be very clear. You need to be organized when you are facilitating the collaboration between teams, and it is very important for you to maintain this collaboration as well from the start of the project to the end of the project. And the transferring knowledge. So the business analyst and the product owner will be the best group, or the people who will be having the most the overall view of the product, and what is the real expectation. Business analyst will know what is the real expectation from the product owner or the customer. So when it's a KT session, that analyst will be the best person to do not the technical level KT session, but overall KT, business analyst will be the best person to conduct the overall knowledge transfer to new joinees, whoever it's required of the team members. And you need to be a very good team member. So you, as a team member, that you need to help the team to clear out the bottlenecks, and you need to build strong relationships. And there might be situations where you need to go into a negotiations with the clients, and there may be sudden leaves from your team members, like sick leaves, and delivery dates will be delayed. So you need to you need to use your relationship building capability and your relationship to manage those type of situations, and minimize the impact on your team, and as well as on your the client customers as well. So how the role of traditional business analysts differ from the what I explained earlier is, the role of traditional business analyst doesn't involve that much of stakeholder management or close relationship with your team. Uh, in the traditional business analyst environment, actually most of the BAs will be looked into more than one project, definitely 2 or 3 projects. So actually it's the 2 or 3 project can be looked and managed easily, because the involvement is very less. But in an agile environment, it's a bit difficult. Usually in an agile environment, in order to successfully manage a project, that it is very important to have 100% allocated BA in the group, because most of the time BA is the one who working as the main point of the team. So leading all the scrum ceremonies and everything, because it's not just BA role, the BA is playing the scrum master role as well. So that's how the traditional business analyst role is different from the agile business analyst role. And traditional business analyst role usually involved more of a documentation, as a traditional business analyst, you will be creating BRDs and FRDs, and maybe technical proposals as well. But in agile environment, usually the BRD will be provided by the business, and you will need to just create the user stories in Jira. If it's required to share over to the stakeholders, you can even use a link in the Confluence, or if Confluence is not there, you can just transfer the user stories into a Word document, and share it with the business users as well. So you can use the user stories that you develop as the FRS as well. So when you're creating a business requirement document in the traditional environments, that business document need to get sign off from the business users specifically, and this document should address to the address and written in the business terms as well. So usually BRD will be contain the executive summary and what are the project objectives are, what you're gonna achieve from this project, and you need to clearly define the project scope and the stakeholders that you will be impacted through this business requirement. And you can add the SWOT analysis in the business BRD as well. So also the cost benefit analysis, the ROI calculation, either as a business analyst, if you are capable of calculating the ROI, you can calculate the ROI, and if that is not possible, you can, most of the time, I usually request the ROI from the business users, because they are the one who mostly working with the process, and they are the one who more aware on the benefits that will be delivered. But when they will be it's provided informally, but you can add it into the document as ROI and mention it there, document it there. And what you can add the timelines, delivery plan in the BRD as well. Then you can briefly mention the functional requirement, and you can also add financial statement attached to the cost benefit analysis. And those will be the main sections in the BRD. Not all these sections that need to be must have in the BRD, but it's better that you define most of the section in your BRD. And once you have created the BRD, you need to share it with your business users, and need to get the sign off from the business users. But you won't just get the sign off from the at the initial draft. There will be you will have to have a separately have a clarification meeting, then you will amend the document again, you will have to reshare, like that it will go on. But at the end, you need to, before you are taking the it has the finalized requirement, you need to wait until the business is signed off through a formal communication way, that BRD sign off uh, to start the next phase. And also when you're communicating with the customers, it is very important to maintain the version control of your documents. Otherwise it will be confusing for the customers and even for you if you don't maintain the version control in your document. And other than these sections, that you should mention the author of the document, and the version, author, and the date may be included in there. And if whether it's an initial draft, after initial draft, each time that you change based on a comment or the request from the BU, that BU, the any stakeholder, you can have a table there in your document, and maybe keep updating it based on the versions. So whatever the first sign off version will be considered as 1.0. So based on that, you can increase the version numbers. But until 1.0, you can just maintain the versions as 0.1, 2, 3, 4, and then the first sign off version will be considered as 1.0. I just mention it there because there will be misleading if you don't maintain the version controls. And then there's a functional requirement document. Functional requirement document should be created for functional requirements as well as non-functional requirements should be covered in the in your functional document as well. So functional document will functional requirement document will be FRD will be mostly shared with once the BRD sign off, you can start the FRD. So there you can mention you can go into more technical terms and mention the exact logic or the technical the requirement can be written in the technical term. For example, just imagine that you need to display few section in a screen. The the values will be written through a API. So you can just so name, age, like that. So you can the mention in your functional FRD that where in the which free field of the API that you can the developer can take the name and age, and if there are any logics applicable like converting the NICs, like that, all those details can be included in the functional requirement document. That's why I mentioned earlier that even your user stories can be used as the functional level functional FRD. So it's similar to user story, as you are mentioning the validations and acceptance criteria in your agile user stories. You need to mention all those things, validations, limitations, acceptance criteria, everything in your functional document. And also functional document should be signed off by usually tech lead of the or the architecture involved, and before start moving on to the development phase. So as a last topic, I'll speak about the stakeholder management. And there will be a lot of stakeholders involved in your project. The interest and the influence of the stakeholder will be different based on their involvement to the project. And so how you manage the stakeholders involved in your project is when you're managing the stakeholders involved in your project, you need to be very careful on their influence and the interest. So just imagine that there's a CEO, but he has a very high level of influence, but he doesn't see, this is not a very critical project. So he has a little less interest on your project. So the currently I'm working in two projects where the retail hub standard development part. So my managing director is not that much interest about the standard project, because he knows that we keep the development, and the team is established and they continue to work. So his interest is very low, but if we want to move, if he by any chance if he get interested, he will have a huge influence over my project. So those type of the stakeholders you need to monitor regularly and anticipate their needs, and you need to keep them informed always. So they will know what you are doing, but their interest or your work will be less, but you will keep them informed. And imagine that I'm doing another project which is at the very early stages and delivery is very critical. So my higher management is like very keen to know what's going on, what are the dependencies, whether we are able to deliver within the agreed timelines. So their interest is very high and influence is very high. So those type of stakeholders you need to regularly engage, and you need to keep them updated and make sure that their requirements are satisfied. And if you're facing any difficulties, it is advisable to inform them early, so they know what's coming next, and they can make their higher level management decisions based on your input. And there may be people who has low influence over your project, but their interest is very high, like the other team members some other team members who will have impact on your project deliverables. But the developer or QA or even the BA, their influence to your project will be very low, but their interest is very high. So you can monitor them closely, and you can inform whatever the information available with them, and keep them engaged as well. But there will be the stakeholders where they are not even interested about your project, and they are not influenceable as well for your project. So for them you can pass the essential information, and you can keep them a minimal contact. And as I mentioned earlier, it is very important for you, for as a BA, to maintain all the communications document, and you need to emailed actually. So you need to be very organized and keep the record track of the changes. So there will be situations, and based on the stakeholders that you are engaging, there will be situations that they will directly point to you saying that this is what you have agreed, this is what your team need to be delivered, like that. I have worked with a when I have worked from a vendor team, and I have faced very difficult situations where higher management is pointing at me saying this is what we expected, this is what what you need to be delivered, but the communication and what we have discussed was completely different from what their imaginations. So those situations, it's for me it was very helped, because I usually after phone conversation I'll just drop a mail to the whoever who I spoke to with the agreed the outcomes, and even whether it's a informal call, I'll just drop a note, so they will know, and they won't they won't be under the misunderstanding as well. So once they receive the email, they can just reach back to me and correct me if I'm not understand that correctly. So those type of best practices are very important when you are a business analyst actually. So that is the areas that I wanted to cover today. If there are any questions, I would like to answer actually.
Any questions, team? Looks like the session was so good. No one has questions, Isha.
Hello, Sachini. Dasun here.
Oh, right.
Okay, some quick clarifications from Asa. Sorry,
Yeah,
I think I got your name
yeah,
correct.
you pronounced my name correctly. Yeah.
It's kind of when it comes to Agile, what we do is we create high-level user story at the beginning, but
Mm.
when it comes nearby the sprint, we make it detailed. Uh,
Mm.
but I can see that you are using Jira. Then can you just give me an idea how you manage in that?
Okay, so at the initial level, that's when I gather the requirement, I usually created a epic level in the Jira, and I'll in the inside the epic I'll describe the added a description, and maybe main objectives that I'll need to achieve the by completing the epic. So the objectives will be there and the description will be there. Based on those, the user stories will be built based on the achieving those objectives. So imagine, so we have around 6 or 7 objectives. There will be maybe 2 or 3 story for each objective, and then only we will go into the story level. As you have correctly said that we initially will mention the high level user stories, but during the grooming session, the what I practice is usually we don't groom the stories that we take into the right next sprint, but we will groom them at least 1 month or 3 weeks, 3 or 4 weeks before. So we will have enough time to make the changes to the room story, and even during the sprint planning we'll take the story, and if the team needs a discussion or the verification regarding the story, we'll have time to update the story as well. Hope I answered your question.
Yeah. Okay. Other one is I'm working both waterfall and agile method. In waterfall method, we have much not time to document everything. Yes, in the end of the project, we are facing sometimes they do change the requirements, but it's possible because sometimes they can forget some cases. In such scenario, do you use kind of UI UX designs using some tools?
Uh, Tools, and what you're asking is to keep a track of changes or to get the new requirement.
No, when it comes to at the beginning to make UI UX
Yes,
designs.
usually yes. In my documentation, if it's a like completely new documentation, I'll include the wireframe on the BRD. So initial stage, the customer will have at least the UI UX, the designers are not always available, but if possible, we'll get the UI UX. So I think it's very important in a waterfall method to sign off the requirement before you go into the development stage. So you will have the UI UX as signed off as well. So expectation is to have the minimal level of change request. Uh, uh, yes, so wireframes or either it's better if you can have the UI UX. So changes will be minimal, but agile methodology, I think you can always, if the customer is saying this requirement is prioritized and the whatever you are working on the agile sprint, you can always descope just imagine that customer is requesting for you to take a 5 story point into the agile sprint, so you can descope the requirement that you haven't start to the same amount of the story from points from the current sprint, and take the prioritized story into the agile sprint actually.
Okay. Final question is, when it comes to Agile, we don't maintain much detail, but have you faced any audits during the Agile methodology?
Yeah, I have faced the audits during the agile, but I think that's why we write very descriptive user stories. Even the one I showed is not that much with the descriptions, but user story with the UI UX included, and everything mentioned in the user story. So the we won't face any like the critical audit queries, but uh, yeah, and the even epic is very detailed, so most of the details will be contained in the epic and the user stories, even though we are not sharing the documents with the customers. And it's better you can have a review with your product owner before you even going for the grooming session. Once you write the user story, you can have a session with your product owner and see whether you have understand the the requirement correctly and mention everything in your user story as well. So even the ROIs, every detail will be included in epic level or story level actually. It's just that you are not creating the document, but details are in there somewhere mentioned.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Sachin.
No problem, Dasun. Anyone else who wants to clarify anything on the training or anything particularly wanted to check with Isha? Looks like no questions from anyone else, Isha. So once again, thank you very much for your contribution in conducting this training for us. And thank you, team, for your participation. If there's no other questions, I think we can conclude today's session. Thank you, everyone, and good night to all you all.
Okay, good night all. Thank you.
Thank you.